Hello and welcome to Friday Night Arcade. My name is Aaron, and this week I thought it might be fun to take a walk down memory lane with the MacVenture series on the NES. This episode is actually a supersized compilation of several smaller episodes that I did a long time ago on the channel, but a lot of folks are new here and probably missed those episodes the first time around, so here's all of them in one big old supersized chunk. I am working on new episodes as well, and if you're already subscribed to the show, stick around to the end for a bit of an update on myself and the channel going forward. And if you're new here, well, I do this sort of thing all the time, so feel free to subscribe if you're interested. It's free to do and just means you'll see the next episode. And if you don't want to, well, that's fine too. Anyway, the MacVenture series on the NES was one of my all-time favorite series of games that I played as a little kid growing up. They were based on a point-and-click series of adventure games that came out on computers and Mac in the mid-80s, and, well, I'll explain more as we go, but let's just get right to it. Here's the MacVenture series on the Nintendo Entertainment System this week on Friday Night Arcade. Welcome back to Friday Night Arcade. This week I'm taking a look at one of my earliest adventure gaming memories, Shadowgate, for the Nintendo Entertainment System. In the late 80s, ICOM Simulations developed a series of Macintosh adventure games commonly referred to as the MacVenture series. They featured a simple menu-based point-and-click interface and placed the player in a series of adventures with puzzles to solve and enemies to defeat along the way. The original computer series consisted of Deja Vu, The Uninvited, Shadowgate, and Deja Vu 2, Lost in Las Vegas, each released about a year apart from 1985 to 1988. With the exception of the Deja Vu sequel, each of these games were ported to the Nintendo Entertainment System. However, they were released out of order. Shadowgate was released first in 1989, followed by Deja Vu, and then Uninvited in 1991. I remember seeing this game on the shelves and being excited about the adventure game aspects with the point-and-click interface. We couldn't afford a computer that played graphic-intensive games in our home, as they were usually the price of an automobile back then, so getting something similar to a computer gaming experience on the Nintendo was fascinating to me, and it was one of the first games that I remember buying with my own allowance money. Shadowgate has a pretty straightforward story. You're the last in the line of kings, and only you can stop an evil warlock from raising a giant behemoth which will destroy the world. To stop him, you'll have to venture into Castle Shadowgate and, solve puzzles and stuff. Shadowgate opens with an ominous warning and drops you off right in front of the castle. And here it is, this is Shadowgate. The screen is divided into three basic main parts. The upper left corner is the first-person perspective of what your character is seeing in-game. The upper right is your inventory as well as your learned spells. You can cycle through this using the commands located on the bottom, and your regular commands are going to be down there as well. You move the arrow around and you can point and click. The commands are pretty straightforward. To move around, you either use the little nav screen on the lower left, or just click on the door you want to go through on the view screen. The navigation screen comes in handy because it basically gives you an indication of where all your exits are in the room, which may not always be apparent if the graphics are a little garbled. And there's usually a door behind your character that you can't technically see on the main screen. You start off out in front of the castle and it's tempting to go tearing through the front door ready to defeat the evil warlock. You walk through and a creepy set of eyes greets you with an ominous warning of certain death ahead. Then you attempt to proceed and you get a locked door. But wait, nope, another locked door. That's right, both of the doors in this first room are locked. You can look around, but the game just taunts you that you seem to be wasting your time, which it does often. The only items you can interact with are these torches on the wall and the rug on the floor. You can set the rug on fire. In fact, when in doubt in this game, just torch the rugs. You'll usually find something. But nothing really happens in this first room. It's a little cryptic, and to the uninitiated, it can leave you scratching your head and possibly even be a deal breaker. If you go back outside, the game warns of wolves off in the distance, and that's basically the developer's way of telling you the path lies forward, not backward. Also, I mentioned those torches, and that's important because they basically act like a timer on how long it takes you to solve all the puzzles and eventually beat the game. You have to keep at least one lit torch in your inventory so you can see where you're going. When the torch starts to die off, you need to light another one ASAP. The music even changes to this creepy tune, and that's your cue that something's about to happen. Run out of torches, and you're dead. You find more along the way as you explore the castle, and there are plenty to beat the game, but it's something to keep in mind. Anyway, getting back to this first part, here's the thing. If you push the start or select button, sometimes the game will give you a little hint to help you out. If you go back out to the front of the castle and push select, the game reads, "The secret thoughts of the skull can be yours." I wonder what that could mean. Should we punch it? Nothing happened. What if we open it? Viola! It's a key that you can use to open up one of the doors and proceed with your quest. Now we can move into the first room and use the key to open the door and proceed with our quest. So let's check out this second room. This looks interesting. Couple of torches, we can definitely take those. Okay, there's a stone on the wall, that looks a little different. Can we open that? Hey, cool, a secret passage. All right, and there's a book sitting there on this ledge. Can we take it? Nope. When you remove the book from its pedestal, the floor collapses and you fall to your death. The Grim Reaper himself even makes an appearance to claim your soul. It's a sad thing that your adventures have ended here. It sure is. So that's basically what this game is all about. Trial and error, solve problems, and see what happens. The cool thing is that you can save your game. Save early, save often, kids. This was one of the first games that I recall owning that actually had save functionality built into it, and I was always fascinated by that concept. The game's quest was so long and so epic that you may have to actually save it and come back to play it another time. Really though, it's because you're probably gonna die a lot trying to guess and check your way through the puzzles. So that's basically what this game is, just pointing and clicking your way through Castle Shadowgate, solving puzzles, and along the way you'll encounter trolls, wraiths, gargoyles, cyclops, mutant dogs, skeletons, werewolves, dragons, giant snakes, and whatever this thing is. The graphics may be a little simplistic, but I felt like the 3D environments were created well, and combined with the spooky music, gave just the right mood and ambiance for exploring this creepy old castle. I also loved the written descriptions, and this reminded me of old text adventures on the computer, games like Moon Mist. But looking back now, some of these were pretty intense for a game that little kids are probably going to be playing. You drive the sword deep into the Cyclops, blood pours out of the wound and onto the grass. As you consume the liquid in the vial, your body convulses and death spasms quickly follow. You enter a cold room, the stench of flesh and decay pervades the small chamber. You try to pass the slime, but it engulfs your body, dissolving it in seconds. You die instantly. The Grim Reaper stands below, waiting to catch you. Holy crap! Really, this game has a lot of adult themes to it, and it's crazy to think I was probably 9 or 10 when I first played it. Check out the blood when you kill this werewolf. There's also all sorts of red herrings along the way. Doors that you can't quite reach but ultimately go nowhere, booby traps, and treasures you can't actually collect. There's just the right amount to keep you guessing without being too frustrating. So as much as I enjoy this game, I have a rather embarrassing story to tell. Now you have to keep in mind, I was a kid when I got this, but here goes. I could not for the life of me figure out how to find the key to get past that first area. I just kept going back and forth between the outside and the inside, and eventually I ran out of torches and died in the darkness. Then the game got put up on the shelf for like 6 weeks. I eventually loaned it to a friend. Well, my friend came back a day later and told me about the key hidden in the skull out front. Yep, I'm an idiot. However, I feel as though little quirks like that are what spurred the way I play games now, where I'm constantly looking in every nook and cranny, trying to find out what the programmers may have hid in there. I've mentioned before on this channel about my experiences of gaming with OCD, and I feel like little teaching moments such as this were all a part of what shaped my mentality about solving problems in games and in real life today. And that's really the thing. Video games and life in general, it's probably just 90% solving a problem of some sort, learning to think outside the box, and learning to try new things. As for whether or not this game is worth playing today, for me personally, I'd say yes. It's a point-and-click PC adventure game experience right on your NES console. I can understand though if this game isn't for everybody, and the point-and-click interface, especially with the slow cursor speed, could be a turnoff for some folks. It could just be an acquired taste. Either you'll love replaying all of the MacVenture series games, or none. This is particularly cheap though in the resellers market and usually goes for under $10. The other entries in the NES iteration of the MacVenture series are a little more expensive. Shadowgate also spawned a couple of direct sequels and even a modernized remake. Someday I'll go back and look at the rest of the MacVenture series, but for now, I just want to celebrate my personal experiences playing Shadowgate on the NES. Overall, this is one of my favorite gaming memories, and I'll always appreciate the experience of playing Shadowgate through the first time. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Friday Night Arcade. Deja Vu was the first game in the MacVenture series, initially released in various computer formats in 1985, although it wasn't ported over to the Nintendo Entertainment System until 1990. It technically came out after Shadowgate for the NES. These games were developed by ICOM Simulations and released on the NES by Kimco. I go into a little bit more detail about the overall MacVenture series in my Shadowgate review, so for now, let's just stick to Deja Vu. Although the story is not at all related to Shadowgate, the interface is all pretty much the same. You've got your commands on the bottom, inventory on the upper right, and a first-person perspective of what your character is seeing on the upper left. You point and click with the cursor, which acts like a mouse pointer, and you can interact with the environment with these basic commands. It's too bad there wasn't some sort of mouse peripheral for the original Nintendo, because that would have been handy. But to be honest, back in the day when I was a little kid playing these MacVenture games on the NES for the first time, I didn't know any better, so it never really bothered me. This time, instead of a heroic quest through a mysterious old castle like in Shadowgate, you plunge yourself into the seedy criminal underbelly of 1941 Chicago. The story is a murder whodunit with all sorts of film noir elements. You wake up in the bathroom stall of a bar with a terrible headache and blood all over your hands. You have no idea how you got there, and in fact, you have no memory of who you are at all. Sounds pretty much like college, right? You've also got a mysterious puncture wound on your arm, and not to say too much else about the story, but it's heavily implied that you've been framed for some sort of murder. You go around exploring your surroundings, looking for clues to your identity as well as trying to figure out what exactly happened and trying to clear your name with the cops. So basically you just wander around the streets of Chicago, searching for clues, shuffling through drawers, files, and notes, finding keys and evidence, trying to figure out exactly what happened. I always love playing these kind of games, and it's just a nice chill experience solving the puzzles and immersing yourself in the story. Looking back at this game now, it's pretty wild to think I played this when I was like 10, and on the Nintendo for that matter. It all lends itself to the gritty detective storyline, but there are some crazy adult themes here. Your character has blood all over his hands when he first wakes up, you immediately find a gun, a mugger points a gun at you and flat out murders you if you don't defend yourself. Some crazy woman also murders you with a gun on the street if you're not careful. At one point you walk into a gun shop and buy guns and ammo, and the shop owner has a beer belly. There's car bombs and you can get blown up. When you're exploring someone's penthouse suite, there's a picture of a nude woman on the wall. You find a random dead body in this guy's office. It's violent too. Oftentimes the solution involves punching people. Technically your character was a former boxer, so for once in these games, using the hit command actually does something. You're just going around cold cocking muggers, drunk hobos, and hookers right in the face. Some snooty butler giving you a hard time? In the face, buddy! And after that, you can hit the slot machines at the casino. Every 10-year-old kid's idea of fun, right? The descriptions in the game are in no way meant for kids either. Sometimes they're kinda hilarious, but sometimes they're pretty graphic. It's a 38 special. Go ahead and make your day. It's a man who appears to be lacking something, namely, life. There are 3 bullet holes in him. A shotgun blast from under the counter has just turned you into shreds. You're on the fire escape. When there's a fire, you can use it to escape. Nice tip. Now to be fair, this game was originally made on computer and meant for a more mature audience. A lot of the stuff got censored, like in the office with the dead body. In the computer version, there's actual visible blood. There's some other stuff too. When you're in the bar, you can take a shot of booze right off the counter, although in the NES version, it's just seltzer. At one point, you have to put medicine in a capsule to consume it, although in the computer version, it was actually a drug syringe. Weirdly enough, it still mentions having a puncture wound on your arm though, so I guess they forgot to edit that part out. In the NES version, you don't find out much about the murderous woman in the street, but in the computer version, it flat out says she's a hooker who just got out of prison, and when you punch her, it makes a pun about her getting right hooked. That's awesome. Even the box art got changed. The NES version just has the hero in a trench coat, but check out the original box art for the computer version. Look at all this stuff. There's poker chips and playing cards, a gun, a crumpled up pack of Lucky Strikes. No, really, that's an actual brand name pack of cigarettes. And on the back of the box, there's booze and drugs complete with a syringe. It's a wonder this game was allowed to be ported to the Nintendo at all. There's some other weird stuff going on in the game here too. What exactly was this chair used for? Why is there a heavyset woman tied up and gagged in the trunk of this Mercedes-Benz? Sometimes the game heckles you too, which is always fun. If you examine yourself, the game says, "You're doing a great job. Keep trying." And when you die, it reads, "Odds were against you. It was only a matter of time before you reached the end." Thanks for that vote of confidence, guys. I always love these types of puzzle adventure games where it gives you a little bit of freedom to try stuff and just see what happens. These games all had a pretty liberal save feature, so you can just try stuff and mess around. Sometimes punching gets you out of a situation, but sometimes it backfires. Like if you punch the owner of the gun shop, he blows you away with a shotgun. You can just turn this wine spigot on or off. It doesn't do anything or get you further in the game, but hey, want to leave the taxi cab without paying? Give it a try and see what happens. You can even open up the lid on this toilet bowl if you really want to. You are relieved that you find nothing inside. Phew. I can understand if this type of thing isn't for everybody though. It can get a little bit tedious fumbling through your inventory, especially with the slow cursor that you have to control with the D-pad. For example here, you have to use the open command to open the desk drawer, then do another command to take the envelope inside. Then you have to toggle through your inventory, open the envelope, and use the take command again to remove the bill inside and physically add it to your inventory. Then you have to scroll back through your inventory and examine the bill to find out what it is. That's 5 different commands and a lot of fiddling with your inventory just to finally examine one clue, and this sort of thing happens all throughout the game. Now, to 10-year-old me, this sort of thing was awesome and I didn't care. I loved the immersion and also the feeling like I was playing a computer game right on my Nintendo console. But I could see how someone picking up this game for the first time today, in the modern era, may have some difficulty acclimating to this sort of playstyle. Musically, I enjoyed most of the tracks. They're not bad and definitely set the mood of the game. There's one that even sounds like it could have been straight from Castle Shadowgate. Overall, it's not bad, just maybe not as memorable as some of those iconic themes from Shadowgate. From a graphic standpoint, could be better, could be worse. You didn't really need spectacular graphics for a game like this, and you have to remember in the late 80s we weren't nearly as spoiled as we are today. All in all, I enjoyed this game a lot, both as a kid and now, but I understand if this isn't for everybody. These MacVenture games are an acquired taste. You either love them or you hate them. Personally, I could have played through a new one every year if they would have made them. The interesting adult-themed storyline and relaxed playstyle, as well as the freedom to explore at your own pace, is just awesome to me. They did also make a MacVenture sequel specifically to Deja Vu called Lost in Las Vegas, which I've not actually played yet. That one wasn't ported to the NES, although they did eventually release it as a combo pack for the Game Boy Advance. What do you think? Did you enjoy games from the MacVenture series growing up, either on computer or on the NES? What are some games similar to this, but not necessarily part of the MacVenture series that you remember playing? Did you have one in particular that was your favorite? I think for me my favorite is still Shadowgate, but I enjoyed all of these games a great deal, and the puzzles in Deja Vu make just enough sense to where it can be solved without a walkthrough if you're willing to put in the time. If you've never played it, give it a shot sometime and see what you think. Welcome back to Friday Night Arcade. My name is Aaron, and this week we're kicking off the October Halloween season by taking a closer look at one of my favorite spooky titles for the Nintendo Entertainment System, The Uninvited. It's a good old-fashioned haunted house tale and part of the MacVenture series. I've covered the MacVenture series before on this channel, so I won't go too much into it, but this was a series of first-person point-and-click adventure games developed by ICOM Simulations. They were originally released on computers in the mid-80s and ported over to the NES in a slightly different order shortly thereafter. The characters and stories of these games were unrelated, but the gameplay was basically the same across the board. Let me explain how this works in case you've never played one of these before. You control this cursor on the screen and it sorta acts like a mouse cursor. You have a first-person view of your surroundings in the upper left, a mini-map in the lower portion of the screen, along with commands that you can choose to interact with the environment. Then you have your inventory section in the upper right. You can move around in a non-linear fashion, exploring the areas, opening doors, examining the areas, and taking items, finding and using keys, or learning magical spells. This is a much more chill NES gaming experience compared to the frantic button-mashing shoot-'em-ups and platformers that you would most likely be accustomed to as a gamer at that time. I always enjoyed the heck out of these MacVenture games because it felt like you were getting a computer adventure gaming experience, but on the home console. It's just so different than the types of NES games you'd normally see. The story here is you wake up after a car crash to find that your sister who was with you in the car has gone missing. You get out of the car just before it explodes to find that you're in front of this foreboding old mansion. You figure your sister must have gone inside for help, so you set in after her to see where she went. As you continue to explore the mansion, a sense of dread sets in as you become increasingly aware of the fact that the only inhabitants of this place don't seem to be among the living. Most of the story is divulged through diaries that you find throughout the mansion, which reveal horrific accounts from the former residents. There's a totally original backstory about a mystical sorcerer who had an apprentice named Draken who grew too powerful and started using magic for evil, because that's just what apprentices do when they learn magic, right? Along the way, you'll also run into all sorts of terrors: ghosts, spiders, flying tomato monsters, zombies, hellhounds, bloated snakes, little dancing monsters, one-eyed bats. Some of the imagery is downright creepy for an NES game. My favorite is the Scarlet O'Hara ghost, which is also featured on the cover of the box. She first appears in a hallway with her back turned to you. She seems harmless enough, but if you try to move past or talk to her, oh god, oh crap, she murders you and you die and then you're dead. You'll have to find a can of no-ghost spray to dump on her in order to get past. It's crazy to think how adult-themed this game was. The description the game gives when the ghost kills you is grisly in detail. You have gotten the attention of the mysterious lady. She turns to face you. Her face is devoid of any flesh. You are frozen with horror as she begins ripping you apart. She laughs hysterically as your body slumps to the ground. There's more like this too. When you find the ghost of the butler that used to live in the mansion, if you don't do just the right thing, he slimes you. And the slime is acid. The screaming apparition's misty form engulfs you and you become covered in a thick, sticky goo. It's acid. It doesn't take long for it to dissolve your body. Holy crap! This would be a good time to mention that you die a lot in this game. It's a good old-fashioned try-it-and-die adventure game, but with the save feature as well as a liberal continue option that just starts you a screen or two back, it never gets annoying or over the top. Sometimes it's fun to just find more ways to die to see what kind of grotesque imagery the developers put in there. Check out this horde of zombies you stumble across in the maze, especially when you see a close-up of their face. Ugh. There's also this weird cell where the inhabitant is just standing there. In the computer version, he's actually holding his own decapitated head, but the Big N had them tone down some of the violence a bit for the NES release. Still though, it looks like he has blood on his hands, and every time you die, you're greeted with this creepy blood-red skull, which still somehow made it into the NES version. There was a lot of text that got censored too for the NES release, like some of the descriptions of the deaths, which is crazy considering what made it in, and they changed some of the religious overtones. In the computer version, you find a cross that you use in the final battle, but on the NES it's replaced with a goblet which has holy water in it. Another thing, the original address for the mansion was 666 Blackwell Road. That got edited in the NES version, but the envelope still reads that it was addressed to Master Crowley. I'm not sure if Nintendo just missed that reference or didn't put two and two together, because that was most likely a reference to Aleister Crowley. Remember the song Mr. Crowley by Ozzy Osbourne? I'll put a link in the description if you want to check out more of the side-by-side comparisons of what got edited out for the NES release. I mentioned dying, and that's where it gets to the crux of what these adventure games are all about. Trial and error. On the one hand, you could argue that Uninvited is actually a bit easier than the other entries in the MacVenture series. It doesn't seem like there are nearly as many puzzles this time around compared to, say, Shadowgate. You could beat the game in 15 to 20 minutes if you know what you're doing. However, there is a bit of a reason for this. In the computer version, there was a time limit on the game. As your character explored the mansion, he'd start to grow more and more insane from the overwhelming evil presence that dwells there, eventually becoming a zombie and joining the rest of the undead. The NES removes the time limit for the most most part, although it does add in a devious red herring. As you're exploring the mansion, you find a mysterious blood ruby in one of the dresser drawers upstairs. Your natural inclination is to go ahead and grab it, seems important enough, and the key to success in just about every adventure game is to take any item the game mechanics allow you to pick up, right? Well, if you pick up the blood ruby, then you start to go a little more insane after every turn and eventually die. The evil presence proves too much for you. You are united with the massive horde of undead that inhabit this estate. You turn around to see your horrific new master, a blood-red skull smiling fiendishly at you. Your quest is over. Dang. The thing is, there's really no indication in the game that the ruby is the cause of the death timer. If you just put the ruby down or don't pick it up at all, there's no time limit and you're free to explore and find plenty of other ways to die on your own. It's a dirty trick and I remember getting fooled by it plenty of times when I was a kid before finally figuring it out. But how would you know? Furthermore, this game, more than any other game in the series, has so much useless crap to pick up. In the computer version, you can only carry a total of 15 items. However, in this version, you have unlimited carrying capacity, and you're going to need it to carry the haul of over 60 obtainable items scattered throughout the mansion. This whole place is like sifting through your grandparents' boxes at a rummage sale. Spatulas, pots and pans, kitchen knives, serving bowls, jars, flour, ink blotter. Ink blotter? What am I supposed to do with an ink blotter? Some of the puzzles make sense, like if you search the couch at the front of the house, the description tells you that it feels like there is something hard sewn into it. Use one of the kitchen knives to cut open the couch and you'll find a key that you can use to unlock several things around the mansion. Hey, that seems logical. But in other instances, like with the butler ghost, would you guess that you're supposed to find a can of pesticide, use it on the ledge where you see the spider, leave the room and come back in so the spider walks across the ledge where you sprayed and gets paralyzed? Pick up the paralyzed spider and then carry it to the butler's quarters and throw it at the butler ghost because he's terrified of spiders. Then you can get the diary out from behind the picture on the wall. Who would think to do that? To my knowledge, nowhere in this game does it give you any indication that this ghost is terrified of spiders. At least in Shadowgate or Deja Vu, for the most part, if you're patient and explore the areas carefully, you can get through the game solely on in-game hints the developers sprinkled in there. But that's all fairly minimal here with the Uninvited. I remember getting through this as a kid, and I'm pretty sure I had to just go around using every item in the inventory until I figured out a solution. Just going around flinging spatulas and flour at ghosts until something happened. But hey, it's not all gloom and doom. Here's an adventure game tip from your old Uncle Aaron. In most of these games, there's a place where you can dispose of items that you're carrying. In Shadowgate, you could throw items into the fountain at the back of the castle. In Deja Vu, you could throw items away in the sewers. Here in Uninvited, you can throw them in the backyard behind the mansion. But here's the thing, the developers are nice enough to throw up a red flag and have the game stop you if you try to throw away an item you actually need. So just pick everything up, walk out to the backyard, and toss every item on the ground that the game will allow. Whatever you have left in your inventory afterward is crucial to your quest, which should save you on some trial and error later on. No wonder these ghosts were always trying to kill me. I basically broke into their house, cleaned out their pantry, and threw everything in the yard. Probably looks like an estate sale threw up back there. This game also has a sense of humor about it, and it doesn't take itself too seriously. For example, when you're in the church, you find a secret passage that goes to an underground tunnel. If you try to go down the tunnel, the game warns you not to go down there because there's a giant spider. You really don't want to climb down there. There's a spider down there that's bigger than a bread box. No, really, that spider is bad news. Don't try to go down there. Of course, you go down there and, well, what do you know? It's a giant spider. It crushes your tiny body in its large, powerful jaws. This game has a few fun callbacks to other entries in the MacVenture series as well. For example, as you're exploring the maze, you find a gravestone marked with the name Ace Harding. That's the detective from Deja Vu. Also, if you try to play the phonograph in the game room, it briefly plays the main overture from Shadowgate. This game is still fun though, at least to me. It was cool to me just getting a computer gaming experience on a home console. At the time, we didn't have a computer. Who could afford one? They cost as much as a car back then, so this was the next best thing. After I got my feet wet with Shadowgate, I bought these games every time they came out, and I wish they would have made more of them. As far as where Uninvited ranks among the others in the MacVenture series, it's probably not my favorite. Shadowgate is still my go-to in this genre, but that doesn't mean this entry is bad by any stretch. Like I mentioned before, the lack of logical in-game clues for some of the puzzles is a bit of a detractor. Also, I wasn't as big of a fan of the music this time around. It does a good job of setting the spooky tone, but it's not all that memorable. I will also mention that the mansion isn't nearly as intriguing of a setting to me. It's a cool concept, but for the most part, you're just exploring very normal looking rooms in this kind of boring house. You're just creeping through some random dude's bedroom, reading his diary, and then ransacking his utility closet. Eventually, you find a maze and some creepy caves, but that's only a small percentage of the game. I will say that it makes up for it with the horrifying ghostly images and jump scares though. Also, all of these Kimco adventure games just kind of have a specific art style that I really enjoy. They all kind of look the same and the look is kind of its own thing. It's cool, I like it. I do have to comment on the ending of the game, so there be spoilers ahead, yarr. By the time you get to the end of the caves, you find this Shang Tsung looking guy who tells you the rest of the backstory about Draken. Then you thaw out this big chunk of ice and it turns out Draken was just frozen there the whole time. His body floats down the caves and then you're just standing there with his sleeping body. The solution is literally to just kick him into this pit in the middle of the room. That's it. No big epic final showdown or anything. Then you climb up a staircase and you're just instantly back in the mansion. This time you can hear your sister screaming. When you find her upstairs, she's possessed by a demon and the solution is to just throw holy water on it. Boom. That's it. It just doesn't have the same grandeur or scale as the final battle with the behemoth in Shadowgate and having to find and assemble all the pieces to the weapon before the big showdown. I realize I'm nitpicking here. Don't get me wrong, this is still a good game. It just feels like kind of a letdown for a final battle. Overall though, I still highly recommend checking out all of the NES versions of the MacVenture series if you get the chance. Unfortunately, Uninvited is the most expensive of the bunch as it was released later in the NES lifespan and as such is a bit more rare. A loose cartridge goes for somewhere between 40 and 50 bucks. These games were ridiculously good fun and some of my all-time favorite childhood adventure gaming experiences. What do you think? Did you play Uninvited or any of the others in the MacVenture series growing up? What are some of your other favorite spooky titles on the NES? I'd love to hear about your experience with this one. Hey, I do this sort of thing all the time on my channel. If you enjoyed this, feel free to leave a like as it does help, and here's some other videos that you might enjoy. You can also subscribe for new videos each week, and if you haven't already done so, make sure to click the bell notification on the front page because otherwise YouTube has a funny habit of not letting you know when I've uploaded a new video. Hey, thank you so much for watching. Please don't text and drive, and I'll see you next time on Friday Night Arcade.